sports fans? Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Boy, was it a long time coming for us to be back on, and boy, we are excited to be on a Thursday night. This is the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Chase joining us. Commanders Eagles tonight. We got a fun one tonight on the Thursday night. And listen, it's going to be fun all the way through. Whoever loses or wins tonight, I don't think it changes really the landscape other than just the division. I mean, we're going to get a good one either way, but I mean, you're starting to look at a lot of teams. They're building up some fire in week 11. So prime predictions tomorrow, but tonight, it's going to be where it's at, though. But I'll tell you what, I'm looking at a lot of stuff that's important. This game here is fun. I do believe, though, I mean, I caught a little bit of some NBA action last night while I was up at Dave & Buster's. I'm really sorely disappointed at the Milwaukee Bucks. I really, really am. And, I mean, the fact, I'll get into a little bit of it. But Ohio State, Indiana, here we go. That's
next week.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a hell of a matchup. I mean, it's going to be great.
Next week, I can't wait. I mean, this week they got Northwestern, then they got Indiana, then they got the big game at the end of the season to end it all and round out their season. I am looking forward to Ohio State going in and just smacking the crap out of Indiana.
I'll tell you what, because I'm going to talk about it here on the show tonight, but there are some things that I'm interjecting after what Colin Cowherd mentioned about Ohio State that literally had everybody like blow a gasket. I'll get a little bit up into that. But here's what I will be honest about. Tonight, it's going to be a fun night. Commanders, Eagles. So what I've told a lot of people about this, and this has been talked about from the time that like the Eagles, they were on a slow and yet rocky start. And I think a lot of that had to be because we were very heavily critical on Nick Sirianni. And right now the Eagles, Sirianni, since the jousting at Browns fans after the win, I think is what really set the tone for Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman to tell Nick Sirianni, grow up and get out of the way. You are now starting to see the Eagles, and they're playing in Philadelphia tonight. Tougher atmosphere, shorter week on a primetime Thursday night. And I've got Jaden Daniels. I mean, I think the Philadelphia Eagles and what we're seeing here tonight, this is a different Philadelphia Eagles team right now than what was started this year and even going back into last year in the 7 games where they went 1-6. So this is important for them, not only just for seeding purposes, but even for just the division itself. The Eagles claimed the NFC East after last week. And so tonight is where they're going to try to double down on it. But here's what I will say, though, about both these teams. So let's talk about the Commanders. Whether win or lose, this season was not meant to be an all-in season. So that's where I wanted to put context for everybody about explaining about the Washington Commanders. I talked to a lot of people, and I have very, very good people in my back pockets that I've always, texted and really kind of been getting some insights. Couch Coach, who's now a part of this great network of Sports Wave Network. Absolutely love him. Commanders fan. And he's great about the Commanders. Rio Robinson, I chop it up with him all the time, and he's very close with it. Lake Lewis and, Anthony Armstrong. All these great people closest to the organization. They are just riding this wave, whether it's a win or a loss, because next year is where it's at. Next year, they'll have a bigger cap space. They'll go and afford to buy some players, because I'll tell you what, they've got Terry McLaurin right now. I don't think they have a whole lot of trust in De'Ami Brown, but he is a part of their future. I think he'd be a very good slot receiver. They could go buy a T. Higgins because he's already going to be declared for the market. So they could afford some guys. And right now, because they have a franchise quarterback in the making in Jaden Daniels, this is now giving them the identity for what the next few years is going to look like ahead. But they need to get a defense. They need to get an offensive line. And I'd say you give him another weapon. Why not? I think that's really what you got to do. So I think this is a prime spot for the Washington Commanders for multitude of reasons. Ownership is brand new. The GM, the coach, the quarterback. I mean, I've never seen so much happiness in Washington for a very long time. I really haven't. And this is where I feel happy for when organizations who've gone through years and years of turmoil and they change it up, they set the tone, they get the right guys, and this is what it looks like. This is flourishing. When culture changes happen, you start to see the mood of the organization and the team as a whole. I mean, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, what he's doing. They've had to deal with coordinators in the last few years until they finally got a competent coach, and now it's changed the culture. Look at what the Detroit Lions have had to do with their family business. Once the daughter took over, they then got Brad Holmes, they went and got Dan Campbell, and they've invested with Jared Goff, but it's more of a camaraderie of a team. Now it looks much more competent, and it looks like the NFC is ran through from the Lions right now with the way they're playing. It's important. When you have a camaraderie type of chemistry in this team, it's hard to stop them with or without Aiden Hutchinson. So the Commanders are in that spot. And look, the Texans, the thing about them is last year they found their franchise quarterback in C.J. Stroud. But this year, they're getting battle-tested. Now the offensive line is starting to have problems, especially in the interior. I don't think the tackles, because I do think Tyus Howard and also Laramie Tunsil, I think they're fine. But it's the interior spot that's really kind of giving C.J. Stroud some hell. The other thing is Stephon Diggs out for the season. Nico Collins hopefully will be back. But you could see kind of where the weaponry is. John Mechie and Tank Dell, they have to step up. Defense looks very, very good. The Commanders by next season, when they start spending money and they start drafting quality players and they start really putting this all together, that's where you go on a prime run. Now, for the Eagles, I mean, Jalen Hurts, on the start of the season, made so many mistakes. He's made so many mistakes. I mean, when you watch that Atlanta Falcons game and how that went down, you know Nick Sirianni's not a situational coach. Once he's in the way, it changes the Eagles. The Eagles don't play well when he's out of the way. I think that's where the Eagles really figured that out. Look at what happened when he had Shane Steichen. He did the same thing the first year Sirianni was the coach. When he got in the way, the team was on a 2-5 spurt. Once he changed things up, offense looked completely different. And it allowed Shane Steichen to be the offensive coordinator, to put together the play calling, to put together the play scheme. And Jalen Hurts, even with an A.J. Brown, the team was going off. So now, Eagles are starting to get serious. The defense is playing better. So sometimes you got to make small tweaks like this. And this is for the benefit of what the season's going to look like. So tonight, whomever wins or loses, Washington's in a prime spot for the future. And the Eagles, Sirianni's out of the way. Kellen Moore now can start calling a lot of these plays and set the offense up for success. And Vic Fangio, by the way, is already putting together that defense with young rookies in Cooper DeJean and Quinny Mitchell. I mean, the pass rush as well. That's going to be tough to face against. On the road in Philadelphia in a harsh crowd. I mean, it's tough to play there. It's a tough atmosphere. But I think they're in a much better prime spot. I really do. And I think the Eagles, I've taken them to win. I mean, I'm doubling down on it. I think they get the lead in the East by 2 games. I mean, this is going to be action-packed either way. But the thing about the Eagles is they have to prime up for that snap-and-go mentality that Jada Daniels has, whether it's a pass or whether you go and you run. I mean, that's initially with what it comes down to. All right. I started thinking about this. So the New York Jets are 3-7. It's becoming a complete, total disaster of a sellout. I mean, it's bad. And you're seeing the defense play atrocious. Aaron Rodgers is really showing his age, and he's showing his Achilles heel and how it's healed up. My thing with the Jets, I know a lot of people have been saying that there is a possibility that he could be back next year. What if, and I'm looking at this because there are several teams that could be drafting a quarterback, the Giants, the Browns, the Panthers maybe, but I think that's becoming a little thin now because Bryce Young's playing for his starting job. But there are several teams out there that could be drafting a quarterback. The Raiders have already made their mind up. They want Shedeur Sanders. They want him really bad. But I'm looking at the Cam Wards, the Jalen Milrose. I'm looking at a lot of those. What if the Jets, because the way this season has really flip-flopped, I mean, what if they just basically threw this season away? I mean, ultimately what's going to happen is Woody Johnson, and this is a real thing, he's going to be passing down to the brother for 4 years, because I guess this is kind of like their term thing between, their businesses. He's going to pass this to the brother for the ownership. What if they shake up a few things? I don't think Joe Douglas, in my opinion, I don't think he deserves to get fired, because I think he's kind of the middleman. He's just stuck in the middle of this. Yes, he has to be the guy to provide the contracts. Yes, he has to be the guy to sign off on a lot of these trades. But do you think he really agrees on a lot of this stuff? I don't think so. If you really talk personally, I think he hates it. But what if they shook up a lot of these things? And let's say they go and get, because I think they need a competent coach back in the building. And my guess is, what if Mike Vrabel was the coach? I think he'd be perfect in New York. He's dealt with media. He's also somebody that is not going to tolerate the types of behavior like what we're seeing with Aaron Rodgers. I don't care how old you are. But look at that defense when Robert Saleh left. Sauce Gardner's not playing the same. And several other players. Only one who's really having a very good year is DJ Reed. I mean, he's having a good year. I think Quinnen Williams is also having a very good year. But those are really the only players. I mean, Jermaine Johnson, he's out. So they got to get the defense right. But at the same time, don't take that defense for granted. That's why I think they also have to fix this up with offense. What if they got out of this Aaron Rodgers business and they have Tyrod Taylor? Now, as far as Jordan Travis, I'd have to see how the leg healed. But I don't know if he's really primed for the future. I'm being honest. But what if the Jets got in with the Cam Ward business? Just hypothetically picture this. It would save the Jets a ton of heartache. It would save him from this sellout of Aaron Rodgers because he's not mentally there. I'm serious. Like, I'm telling you. And Devontae Adams, I mean, yeah, you kind of have to, try to cope with it as much as you could. But I think he initially got into a bad situation. It's not the same Aaron Rodgers offense anymore. It's different. It's old. But at the same time, you work up the offensive line. I love their dual running back sets with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. I also do like Garrett Wilson, and hopefully I could see Malachi Corley pop and a couple others. Maybe they go get another receiver. But I think if you bring Vrabel into this, I mean, Vrabel, he goes to Tennessee. Tennessee has a very good defense. They never give up on anything. Their defensive front line, their corners, they always play physical. But they'll have a trustworthy quarterback. It's much like how he had it with Ryan Tannehill. And I know Tannehill kind of hit a wall eventually, and then that's when he was out of the job, and in comes Will Levis. But he's managed to make it work. Even with a brute running game, now you have two-headed monsters at running back. Why not? I just am like, I'm kind of over it with Aaron Rodgers. I don't really talk about a whole lot about him now at this point in the program. I really don't, because it's the same old spiel. You don't have to continuously rerun it to convince me that this is a terrible, terrible sellout. I already know. This is bad. But I think if you hire Vrabel as somebody who has dealt with media and who can be the kind of voice, I'm not saying he could be a massive culture changer like Jim Harbaugh or a lot of those other head coaches, but he's competent enough where he could fix that defense and get him back up in it. And Sauce Gardner will play like his best. And then at the same time, you get somebody smart in there and very creative on the offensive side. And I think you honestly get out of this Aaron Rodgers business. I'm hypothetically speaking. It's not a guarantee. But I'm just saying I'm trying to kind of think about the what ifs. Because honestly, I'm trying to build a little bit of some clarity and some positivity for a lot of Jet fans because they're sold very heavily on this sellout. And I'm just trying to really make things better for them. Good stuff. I mean,
don't you put that Cam Ward juju in the air for the Jets. Don't you do that.
I'm trying to look. I'm adding positivity to the Browns. I'm trying to add positivity to the Jets because this is just bad. I don't need
to get Shador.
I don't need to add. Well, here's the thing. I don't need to add positivity to the Raiders. I mean, they're going to go after Shador. I mean, that's very clear. But I mean, this Aaron Rodgers business is bad, and at the same time, the defense isn't playing like themselves. I mean, they scored 6 points. Kyler Murray is looking like his absolute best right now. And the fact that they only scored 6, and while Arizona is dog walking them for 29 points, that just goes to show you, coaching matters.
I think what they should do is I know they invested a lot of money in him, but there's a chance he could retire next year, and run the season with Tyrod as your backup and then put Jordan Travis as your starter and see what he can do for an entire season. Because I understand that you may not think that he's the future, but sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for at least a year would let him learn and see what he needs to do and what he does not need to do. Yeah. And then not only that, I'm more partial to the offensive coaches than I am the defensive ones. Because here's the sad reality. I heard today where the Bears are going to try to, or they might fire Matt Eberflus and they might try to go after Cliff Kingsbury. And the problem that I have with a lot of defensive coaches becoming head coaches is if they find the right offensive coordinator, for example, Dan Quinn found Cliff Kingsbury. He found Kyle Shanahan. He became a head coach when he was with the Falcons and everything. Then he goes away. He's mismatching between so many different ones, Steve Sarkisian and a whole bunch of others, never panned out. Brings in Cliff Kingsbury, that offense turns out to be really good. And then now what happens? You bring in a new offensive coordinator, Jaden Daniels goes into an entirely new offense, and then you're going to be looking at a regression of how the quarterback play is. If we had an offensive-minded head coach in there at Washington to begin with, now you've got a guy who's going to have the same offensive play caller in the head coach. You don't have to change the offense at all, and you don't have to change up the play calling, and you don't have to bring in a guy who he's not familiar with. That's why I think offensive offensive-minded head coaches are more important nowadays than what defensive-minded ones are. Because, yeah, you could have a coach like Mike Vrabel who's very great with the locker room and very good and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But if he brings in, let's say he brings in an offensive coordinator that does really, really well, becomes a head coach, now what are you stuck with? Now you're stuck with, changing the offense again, changing the offensive coordinator again. And then now your quarterback may go from having an MVP type season to being middle of the pack next year.
And now here's what's funny about that. Because even with defensive coaches, I mean, right now, I'm starting to hear it with Texans that because DeMeco Ryans is great. I mean, he is a player's guy. But right now, Bobby Slowick, it's not happening for them. But I will concur that, I mean, the offensive line is getting tested, and C.J. Stroud is under duress with that interior O-line. That is a position of need they need. I'd say they maybe go and get another receiver and maybe draft one. But with Chicago, I mean, they can't develop offense right. The offensive line sucks. And at the same time, Shane Waldron, what was been their problem is that Shane Waldron puts too much backyard football type of scheme before they even think about just stick to the script, build some consistency first, get cooking, and then start putting all that together. Because if you don't do that, Caleb Williams is not going to work. And now there's a part in it also where players want Caleb Williams benched. Now this reason is because he's just under so much duress and he's getting sacked a lot. You don't want your potential future franchise quarterback to go through that much duress. Now, I will concur and say, I mean, this was what we talked about with Drake May. But at least New England knows, fix up the O-line. Drake May is worthy of getting weapons now. And then you can fix that defense because it's been a defensive culture.
So the problem with Caleb is it's more or less himself than it is anything else. Because I always thought it was his O-line at first too. But I went back and rewatched a couple of videos that people broke down the film on. And in last week's game, where he had 5 seconds in the pocket where he was literally holding the ball and he had a wide open pocket with nobody coming at him and nobody was even close to touching him. And he had DJ Moore open on an out route along the sideline. All he had to do was just chuck it and throw it right away. If he didn't like that, Keenan Allen was open right up the middle. You put it on the left side away from the linebacker, and, that's a first down right there. And then the same thing with his tight end was off to the right. All you do is just plop it up and over, and then he catches it on the go and takes off running. But what does Caleb do? He holds onto the ball. He tries to move up. He senses the pressure, and then he takes off running and scrambling. And now everybody's running all over the place. Dude, if he could just release the ball when he drops back after his first read, he'd be a lot better. And that's the problem. He's holding the ball too long. That's why he keeps getting the sacks. That's on him. That is not on the O-line.
Which that is true. But here's the other thing that I'm also looking at. After the bye, Caleb hasn't thrown a pick, which is one of those things. And many defensive coaches, though, too, they tend to get defensive. They pull the reins. They don't allow their offensive components to move the chains. I mean, this is what happens. If you do that, how are you expected to get points on the board? How are you expected to really test against that defense if that's exactly what's happening? I get there's a share of the pie that I'm sure is on Caleb. But with what we're looking at, I think what Chicago needs to realize, they can't develop offense at all. That has never been in their DNA. But if you're Ryan Poles, I mean, Ben Johnson's even mentioned he wants to come to Chicago. And usually,
did he?
He mentioned he wants to come to Chicago, depending on what Detroit's situation is, which
interesting.
Is
I've never heard that.
Yeah, so that's where I think the prime example with that is you bring him in, offensive coach, now the focus goes to Caleb.
Where did you hear that?
I've heard that there was actually a report. It was there was a report from one of the NFL reporters. I think it was up on, it had to have been one of the tops. Tom Pelissero or someone there. But when Ben Johnson, like privately, was asked about it, because he's doing great things in Detroit.
He is.
But if it had to come to coaching vacancies, he said Chicago may be one to interest him. Because remember, Washington wanted him, but he did not want to go there. And so it missed out on the opportunity. Now, again, the Cliff Kingsbury thing, because, Caleb Williams and Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, they have a very good relationship. That's what people thought it was. But, if you bring in Ben Johnson and what he's doing in Detroit, now the focus now goes to Caleb. Because they have an offensive coach now. Now is where you have to look at the quarterback. We got you an offensive coach. We got you a guy that we know that can focus to get the offense moving. Now the ball is in your court. This is what happens with a lot of quarterbacks. Because in the end, rookie quarterbacks, rookies in general, I'm not going to condemn them because of what a rookie season looks like. Clearly, Jaden Daniels is going to obviously blow it out of the water because of what he's been doing. Bo Nix is getting better every single week. And then Drake May. I mean, we're not going to see Penix and J.J. McCarthy until next year. But as of right now, he's the fourth best quarterback. I mean, that's really a very sinking feeling if you're Caleb Williams. So, I mean, ultimately, they need to get the coaching right. I mean, Waldron was only the first. I mean, Eberflus is going to be coming up next. But I've defended Eberflus because the fact of I like his defensive mind as a DC. But he's not capable of being a head coach. Not a lot of coordinators are capable of being head coaches, and that's okay. I mean, not everybody is fitted for the job. I mean, you look at managers for stores, right? And you could be an associate for like a certain amount of years, but it only takes a special person to know how to manage if they know how to manage life. I mean, we're managing our lives every single day. But if you could do that and know how to manage an atmosphere in a store or wherever, I mean, you're going to go a long way. But there are some associates up out there that I think they're just left as being associates. Just sell. Just move the offense. Just make it a shutdown defense. I mean, you see the trust with Jim Harbaugh, with Jesse Minter. I mean, he's just focusing on defense. He's got the rest of it, and that's all in a culture. There's trust there. So that's why I think Chicago, I like it with the Ben Johnson thing. I mean,
I do too. I mean, that's a great option and everything. I was watching, I think it was First Take, whichever one, Dan Orlovsky and Adam Schefter are on together. I think that's First Take, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching that this morning. Adam Schefter came out and said that Cliff Kingsbury was originally the first choice as an offensive coordinator choice for the Bears because of him and Caleb Williams being quarterback and coordinator in college, and then the relationship that they had. But Matt Eberflus was, scared and, conflicted because he knew that if things didn't work out, Cliff Kingsbury would have been the replacement for Matt Eberflus.
Well, that's the thing, is because Chicago as a whole, and not even just from Eberflus' side, they can't develop offense. That has been a problem. It's always been a defensive culture. So it of course, it's going to scare some people, but sometimes you got to get over the fear. You've never been an offensive organization since the dawn of time. Like, you haven't. And so that's why Chicago really needs to put it away, and they really need to start working up on that offense, because you want Caleb to work. You're investing this much for him to fail. That's not what you want to do. You want to make sure that he succeeds. So, not a lot of stuff, man, but we're going to be breaking it down fully. It's going to be fun here tonight because, Thursday night game and lots and lots of different breakdowns. Got a lot of college football, too, to kind of talk about. But, I'm going to sink a bit of my mind in NBA because I just have to say, Milwaukee is disappointing the hell out of me. And I think a lot of that stems from what had happened last year, and it's continuing on. And right now, the NBA ratings, it's going down in the regular season. It's starting to be like baseball. Nobody's going to tune into it as much because it's a longer stretch of the season. But postseason is what everybody's going to watch. And the NBA, that's what it's going to turn into as well. So,
yeah.
All right, folks. Well, I will tell you what. I mean, they have been, in the season, they have been giving many the opportunity to win big and to experience what one of the best sports books in the nation for over 30 years can do for you, with all of the best account managers to manage up your game and the way you like to play on BetUS.com. BetUS, with the best of the best in the business. They've got everything you need, from parlay, single bets as well on a lot of their betting lines, and their greatest sports book as well. BetUS has it going for everything. Hockey season, NBA season's underway, NFL is cooking, college football, you name it. I mean, hell, they were cooking all during the election. And, so they had all the best bets from there. But BetUS always has you covered week to week, day after day as well, for all the best to get you on the edge of the action. When you go online to BetUS.com and depositing more than $50 into it, adding up to 125% of your first 3 deposits, that adds up to give it more of the fun, up to $2,000 in the winnings and earnings. More chances for you to win, more chances for you to enjoy the fun and see what BetUS is all about. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek your therapist in your state to give you the help that you need, because BetUS wants you to gamble responsibly, never recklessly. Give BetUS a try today. See it for yourself. BetUS, where the game begins.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Check out the Con Man live on the Sports Corner, coming to a screen near you, giving you the greatest stories from basketball legends you've never seen before. Sharing their glory, building the toughness, and how they show off their swag. But only one man knows all that, and that's the Con Man. Join Michael Conceição, the Con Man, at the Sports Corner, Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 Pacific on Sportsway Network.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing deal of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com, and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
So I will tell you, so as I'm out and about and having a lot of fun with a few of our friends, with my wife and I, we went up to Dave & Buster's. Fun time. It's usually always good when you got, little nice date night, little something to kind of, take your mind off of a lot of stuff. But I couldn't help but on the corner of my eye is I'm watching a bit of the Detroit Pistons and the Milwaukee Bucks last night. And I got to tell you, I'm starting to really get turned off by how the Milwaukee Bucks have been playing for the last, just this past year. And since they've changed head coaches, they're 4-8 right now, 3-3 in their conference. And right now, because we know that the change of the NBA, it is starting to become more of a shooters league. And what people are starting to realize is right now is it's not as physical. It's not as urgent like what in the playoffs would. That's why I think the NBA is starting to become like Major League Baseball in some ways, because 162 games a year for viewership, nobody's going to have all the time in the world to watch it on television. They would rather be in the ballparks, okay? You buy $5 for a ticket, you go and get concession, you get a beer, you get whatever, and you're out there in the beautiful ballpark watching a ball game. I mean, that's really the reality of it. It's nice to be in the ballpark. I've already been to Coors Field 3 times now this season, and it's always beautiful in Colorado. It may not look beautiful for the Rockies, but it's beautiful sighting being at the ballpark. But on top of that, nobody's investing 162 games a year on a television. I'm sorry, but they're not going to do that. Look at what the viewership was in this past World Series between the Yankees and Dodgers. You don't think a lot of people tuned in a lot for that? It's always postseason baseball. And that's where a chunk of your viewership goes up. Now, it's never going to trump over the NFL, because the NFL, from schedule releases to holiday matchups for like Thanksgiving and close to Christmas, and then you go right there into the playoffs and the Super Bowl, forget about it. You're not going to beat that. And even in hockey, even when the Stanley Cup playoffs are on, man, you got to watch a lot of hockey fans. I mean, they get invested up into that, and it's fun. It's a fun atmosphere. But the NBA is slowly starting to become a snooze fest. But I think the only thing that we can really account for, because when Steph Curry came into the league, he's changed the way that the game is played in a lot of ways, because not a ton of people, they shot threes, but it was more physical. It was more driving to the basket, and it was more about getting important points, getting momentum. And I'm seeing that right now. Good God. In the game last night, Giannis is out there, and he's shooting he got 16 of 17 on free throws, 1 of 2 from the 3-point. But you are asking a 7-footer to shoot threes. The dawn of basketball has changed. 7-footers shooting 3-pointers instead of just going and attacking the paint. I can understand point guards, shooting guards, and maybe a bit of small forwards doing this. But when I've got a power and I've got a center, I like Joel Embiid, but if I watched him majority playing shooting threes, rather than just go get rebounds and second chance shots and all the rest of this stuff, not going to look good. But I thought last night, and look, the Pistons look good. I'm not giving them crap. The Pistons are 5-8. They're not terrible right now. They got better with some of their guys on their lineups, and especially with Cade Cunningham. But that was inexcusable for the Milwaukee Bucks to let that thing go to overtime. I'm serious. And that's the part I'm slowly turned off by the Milwaukee Bucks. I think you made a serious mistake by firing Adrian Griffin when you were clearly the second best team in the East, and you settled for Doc Rivers, who clearly right now is a bit fraudulent the later in the years he's coaching now. And Giannis, let me be honest about this. No pun intended. He's not going to be in Milwaukee for long. He's not. I think the LA mentality really has gotten into his head, And when he demanded having Adrian Griffin out, and it's more of a Dame and Giannis kind of show, whatever happened to the defensive Milwaukee Bucks? I loved watching them because they get defensive, they'll score, they could get tough and physical. I mean, look, with Mike Budenholzer, it was one thing. But this is different when you've got Adrian Griffin fired. And now you're settling for Doc Rivers. The Doc Rivers you watched in Philly, the Doc Rivers you watched in Brooklyn, and the Clippers. What are you going to do? What are you going to do from here? I think Milwaukee really got themselves in this position. And it's such an eye-gouging type of, like, literally, I can't even go watching a Bucks game now. I really can't. I used to like watching Giannis and watching that defense and watching how they attack the perimeter. I mean, yeah, they'll shoot occasional threes. They'll shoot the threes when they know that they need to. But without Drew Holiday, who's clearly thriving in Boston, without their much-needed defensive guys, who the hell are the Milwaukee Bucks now? Just shoot and give up the defense and then put yourselves into positions where you shouldn't? Yeah, sounds solid. Until you face, I don't know, people were wrong about the Warriors. The Warriors seem to be playing really good basketball right now. But that'll be the worst case scenario when you got to face the Celtics, you got to face Minnesota, and you got to face several other teams that you know are just not in a position with what Milwaukee is. And you are clearly seeing it, and it is god-awful. It makes me want to throw up every time when I look at it. Inexcusable, unacceptable. But I think this is the last time we'll see Giannis in Milwaukee. Time now for the news.
This is the Hot Press.
I've never have been brutally honest about just watching a bet. Because listen, I don't watch a ton of NBA like that. I don't. I grew up differently with basketball. I love the physicality and I love driving to the basket. This is slowly the NBA's in big trouble with this. But I'm not surprised because there's not a ton. I mean, the NIL is slowly cooking it up for college hoops. But this is why you need to get players to go back for a second and a third year in college. Get the experience before coming into the NBA. And maybe teams will actually be competitive for once. I mean, this is not good. And I'm starting to see that where this team, they fired the wrong guy. They made a big mistake with it.
And I think that with baseball, baseball and basketball, baseball, they need to lower their games down to 80 games a season, because if you look at that 2020 season when they had an 80-game season because of COVID, viewership went up by 4 or 5 million viewers that year because of it being a shortened season, and everybody's just engaged in it because it's the summertime, and it was going on from the end of May all the way up until October.
Well, it was short and simple, and at the same time, the urgency was there.
Yeah, it was. And it's the same thing with football. Football gets all of the ratings because you see it's a shortened season. It grabs the people's short attention spans and the physicality of it and everything. Basketball and baseball would get the viewership if they shortened their games and just made it more exciting to watch.
Well, think about this. I mean, you watched the All-Star game last year, right? Do you know how lacking of defense that was? These players don't care to play defense anymore. And yet we're talking about load management? So at least with the NFL, I know what I'm getting. 18 weeks and consistent football. Even if you're a very bad team, even if you're a Jets or a Patriots or a Browns, I'm getting consistent football every week. Nothing's changing. Whereas I'm here in basketball, and this is what I spoke to a lot of close people. I'm spending my hard-earned taxpayers' dollars, okay, to be in that game. If I was to go down there into Ball Arena to watch a Nuggets game play, and I go there and look, I'm going to spend money on getting food and getting beer and getting, all this stuff, and probably going to be in the best seat to go and watch my stars. But if Jokic and Murray and like a lot of people out, I mean, I'm going to be feeling sorely disappointed because I'm there to watch my stars. That's why I feel for a lot of these fans because, I mean, good God, I don't even know how Clipper fans even deal with this with Kawhi. I don't. And it's just like Steve Ballmer and company, like, look, I think they're very smart, but that is a business decision with this load management and with the injury history. I don't know how they could possibly end up hanging on to this. I would have gotten past this already after the last few years. But you know what? I think this is kind of the nature of the business in the NBA. It sure as hell would never, ever fall like this if it was the NFL. The NFL would be so turned off, and they would be looking for the next thing.
So we have seen multiple changes in the NFL. We now have confirmation that Anthony Richardson is back starting as the Indianapolis Colts quarterback after they had committed to Flacco for the entire season. And to me, one, I think Shane Steichen needs to make up his mind instead of going back and forth. And two, I think if you thought Richardson wasn't ready and he was kind of raw still, you should stick with Joe Flacco because he gives you the best chance to win. And the fact is the players have even come out in favor of Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson as well.
But you know what, though? Flacco, in the last 2 weeks that he's played, he hasn't looked like himself either. And which is kind of crazy because, the Colts, I mean, I don't think the Colts, in my opinion, did terrible business from I think when it came to like free agency, I probably would have gotten other guys, but the draft, I mean, they nailed it with Laiatulatu. And as far as A.D. Mitchell and all of that, I'm going to hopefully see that next year. I'll see that through and through. I don't think they did a terrible job on the draft, but it really does come down to how the team manages on a week-to-week basis. And I because they do have talent here. The problem is that there's just not a whole lot that's clicking. It's sad, but I mean,
let's go to the college football side of things now. It was confirmed from Deion Sanders himself today on First Take that he said that if he doesn't mind his team or his son going to a team with the battle line, because he said he's played with the battle line a lot of his career. Yeah, and he doesn't mind his son going to a bad team if they've got the infrastructure put in place. But he said that he will step in and, make a decision whether or not his son will go play for an organization like the Jets, since they are not, cooperated and functional right now. And to me, and he also said the same thing with Travis Hunter. I'm like, to me, Deion Sanders just needs to shut the hell up and focus on college football. Because I think Eli Manning and his dad, or I think Eli Manning's dad should not have any say in what goes on in the NFL. I think John Elway was just being dramatic and being a baby, wanting to request a trade to not play for the Colts and go to the Broncos. And I think Deion Sanders, even though he's a Hall of Famer, is the same thing, just causing a bunch of drama, being an absolute crybaby, and he should have no say whatsoever whether or not his son goes and plays for a specific team. And, and that's just my opinion, because I think at the end of the day, his son should choose where he wants to play, and you should be happy that your son is at least getting drafted.
So and this is where I'm going to play devil's advocate for this respective reason, because we have seen this in the past. We've seen this with John Elway. where he passed on the Colts, goes to the Broncos. We've seen this with Eli Manning. Now, luckily, they traded quarterbacks. So Manning did not initially want to go to San Diego and instead goes to the Giants. We all know what the history was like for both those quarterbacks. Eli got 2 Super Bowl rings, while Phillip Rivers, he was the most efficient quarterback. I mean, he's a gamer. He's a guy that wins. He's a guy that throws passing touchdowns. So it's like, in that time, it kind of worked out for both sides. But the idea is if you're the Raiders, I mean, this could be a very good thing for a few reasons. Because number one, close connections with Tom Brady, minority owner. This is part of it. It's sending little crumbs into the idea that Shedeur Sanders would go to the Raiders. I don't think there's any question about it. But if I had to look at organizations that I would choose, okay, the organizations that I would choose that I would feel good about, one, the Raiders, because Max Crosby, as long as he's there, I've got energy. I got juice in the building. It gives me a fighting chance. And they have enough money to spend in the cap to go and fix that O-line, to go and I mean, I don't think they have terrible weapons. I think Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer as a dual tight end is really good. Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, I think those are very good receiving options. And you could go draft another receiver. So I think that's a good spot. I think, like I said before, if you're the Jets and Woody Johnson passes this to his brother and then they get out of the Aaron Rodgers business, this is a prime spot. Because now I have a veteran quarterback who actually I could relate to in Tyrod Taylor, right? Mobile, scrambles, and very accurate, and he's a bridge type. He's been through this multiple times. Shedeur can build confidence in this. And between him and Garrett Wilson, oh my God. That's and a healthy dual-headed running back set. What could you ask for that? I think the ones that I would steer away from, if it was the Panthers, oh, hell no. I mean, I understand they're trying to get draft capital, but you know how they've been with developing quarterbacks. I would stay away from there. And a lot of, what's funny is a lot of players, even in the league, or former players, have said, you don't want to go to Carolina. I'll tell you right now, it looks like a circus show. And it's more for his own benefit, right? So, and then, I know you'll explain this better, but it's a hard spot with what Cleveland's got with Deshaun Watson. It's not really, very hard.
I can see where you're coming from because of the Deshaun Watson thing, but if the Browns really truly want to move on and get a new quarterback, Deshaun Watson thing, Deshaun will be the backup quarterback next year. If keeping him on the roster means that you need to have him there for money purposes, keep him on the roster as a backup, because there's no way you're going to draft a guy as high as Cam Ward a guy as high as Shedeur Sanders with the baggage that'll come from Deion Sanders,
right?
If he doesn't play, not to play him. So you're going to play him, but not to mention the weapons we got: David Njoku, Nick Chubb, Cedric Tillman, Jerry Jeudy. Like, the offensive line is decent. And the head coach has been there since 2020, and the GM has been there since 2020 as well. So we've got a stable front office and head coaching option. And the coach, if Shedeur's his guy, he's got the guy that he's wanted that he's been looking for so long in the building now. And so why can't it just be Cleveland that gives him the choice? All I'm saying is that Deion, if it was my son in the situation that Shedeur's in, I'm not going to step into any NFL organization and be like, no, I'm sorry, my son's not going to play for you. No, I would be happy with whatever organization drafts my son, and I'll look at my son and be like, go show them who you are and show them why they drafted you this high, and then make a name for yourself.
But see, this goes back to when, remember when Caleb Williams, at his time at USC, remember when they talked about the Chicago Bears out of his personal camp, and they thought that he didn't want to go to Chicago. But here's the thing. somebody's paying attention to what's happening in that organization. I mean, this has been an organizational problem with the McCaskies for a long time. Somebody's paying attention to it. Now, of course, he had to get up on media and he had to clarify and add context that even if he was to go to Chicago, he's not gonna tear up this organization. Wherever you get drafted to, I mean, you gotta have to deal with the cards that you're dealt with at the end of the day. You're not always going to get everything that you want, which I can understand that. I mean, hell, we already projected that with Drake May going to New England, my fear is because my thought with him going to New England, number one, you better have a left tackle to protect his blind side is one. Two, he would clean up the time in the pocket because if he's holding the ball more often, he's going to be in trouble. But he's executed on all of those. He's run out the pocket more. He's opening up spaces for his weapons. Drake May, for as much as we feared him going in and starting with literally no weapons, an offensive line that's just bottom tiered. Look at that. And I mean, there are outliers. I am a firm believer that there are outliers of quarterbacks that change the atmosphere of what we think, how the position is ran. Because, I mean, Jaden Daniels, like I said, they're living in the moment. I mean, they got everything brand new. They got money to spend next year, and they've got their franchise quarterback. Bo Nix is serving to be the outlier because Denver fans don't even have to think about that Russell Wilson contract anymore. They know it's there, and they have 2 years to pay this off, but he's developing. Sean Payton's got his guy. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, yeah, you are going to be in organizations where it's not that easy. Sometimes you have to look at, do we have our franchise guy? Because this is what context is about. When you have a franchise guy, it makes everything else simplified. It really does. Because, I mean, think about it. When Justin Herbert came in, nobody knew what he was about. People thought, he wasn't going to translate in this league until he came into a push-to-shove situation because of what happened with Tyrod Taylor. And yet a terrible O-line, weapons that at times, depending on the availability and their health, was questionable. But he was throwing to guys like Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton and so many of these other receivers. So it made it work. So sometimes you just never know. But I could understand from some of the organizations that if I see toxicity there, I'm not going to put my kid in that. Of course, I would want my kid to succeed. And of course, I would want them to go through life situations, to be prepared for situations like this. But if you're in a tougher, toxic environment, how do you expect them to have any kind of positivity coming out of that? This is constant.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
I mean, to me, I just think that Deion Sanders is just, being toxic and causing a whole bunch of drama. And I think that Eli Manning and his dad did the same thing. Like, you didn't see Peyton complaining because he was going to the 2-14 Colts and going into a terrible situation there. No, he sucked it up and ended up playing for that team and ended up winning a Super Bowl with that team. So,
now, remember, times like in 98 versus 2004, I mean, times they were somewhat similar, but it was slowly kind of changing at that timeline. Because in old school, you were thrown in wherever that you were put at. And that's a fact. You were thrown with whatever situation you were going to come into. You didn't have that kind of luxury where you could pick and choose where you wanted. That's why I think Peyton really had to make the best of it. But the Colts did, however, they saw that once they got Tony Dungy in the building, things started to change. Things started to become a lot better.
Yeah, it's just hard to think about and hard to realize. But like, if I'm an NFL owner and I'm looking at the Shador and Deion situation, I'm steering as far away from that as I possibly can. Like, if I'm Mark Davis, I'm going to look at that situation and be like, do I really want that toxicity? on my team. Like if I as an owner have to listen to Deion Sanders and what I do with my team that I own and I control, then I don't want a quarterback like Shedeur.
But here's the good part. You have Tom Brady as a minority owner now. So he could potentially intervene because they've had close contacts with each other. And he could literally message Deion. If that was the case, he comes to the Raiders, he'll message Deion and say, I got it. I got Shedeur.
Mark owns 75% of the team.
He does. He does. But I'm looking at it from a mentor standpoint, where Deion doesn't even have to fear that. You know what I mean? Because again, if you have a close contact with that, how are you going to fight that? And at the same time, and I know a lot of people were talking about this, and this was brought out by Jordan Schultz. Deion Sanders has had no contacts whatsoever about going to the NFL. He's had none of those conversations. He's focused right now on what Colorado State right now is looking like. And I give Deion credit with what Colorado's looking like right now. I mean, this is an incredible change in just the second year. It's incredible. But I don't see him going to the NFL. I really don't. I don't think he's quite prepared for it yet because it is another beast. But you work with what you got right now. I mean, people are excited in Colorado.
Yep.
All right. Chase with the news.
This is the hot press.
It's kind of funny for the last couple of minutes. This week, I mean, there is a ton of games I like. And we'll do prime predictions tomorrow. But there are a ton of games I like. That Baltimore-Pittsburgh game, however, that is – now, Lamar has had tough matchups against Pittsburgh in his career. It does not look good. But what's funny about what Mike Tomlin has been doing right now with Pittsburgh, because Russ is cooking, and this is what people had to realize with context. Okay, why Mike Tomlin had benched Justin Fields to go to Russell Wilson is not entirely the sole focus, as he was doing Russell Wilson a favor. If you think about it, okay, Justin Fields, he's more into the accuracy motion. Okay, short throws, not making a ton of mistakes, because you look at it, Justin Fields, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick, 1,100 yards. Okay, this is just on Justin Fields. But
you froze, so that's why I left. So
gotcha. But Justin Fields, what he's averaging is about 6.9 yards a pass. That's his average. Now, the mistakes and the picks have gone down. But if you notice, he's not opening up the plays a lot. He's not opening up the field. And I think that's what was kind of the personal knock to Justin Fields. Now, I've always said he's an RPO type quarterback. You can make him a dual threat. But when it comes to you need to make a big play, I think there's a part of that fear that's in Justin Fields. Now, Arthur Smith really has coached him well enough to where he's not making a ton of mistakes like he was in Chicago. I also do think players do like him in the locker room. I mean, they like his presence. He's a guy he's a player's guy. He meshes well with everybody, which is important. But when it comes to Justin, I need a big play out of you. He's afraid of it. And that's just out of respect for Justin Fields. Now, for Russell Wilson, he's already got 737 passing yards, 6 tutties, and 1 pick. Barely making mistakes. But what Mike Tomlin, the difference between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson is Russell has been the guy to open big plays, throw the ball downfield, create space. Justin hasn't quite been shown that in his entirety of his career in Chicago. He hasn't. I've watched spurts in Ohio State where I thought that there could have been big plays because I've seen them before, but part of it when he came into the NFL, it feels like he kind of got away from it. Now, the difference, I mean, you saw a drastic difference between Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. Stroud can literally throw that ball. He could open that field. But as for Justin Fields, I get a lot of the simple throws. I get a lot of the RPO runs, and we're for first downs or for scores. But I don't get a ton of that open field throws with like what Russell Wilson's doing. Okay, so for people to add the context of what the Steelers are doing right now, I mean, this is why you came into the season not looking mediocre at quarterback. You needed somebody to extend those plays. You needed somebody to end up making those throws. And by the way, Mike Williams, who a couple weeks ago was thrown under the bus from Aaron Rodgers, look at what's happening in Pittsburgh. He's clearly not trash. He's not garbage. And he's not somebody that clearly Aaron Rodgers is just a shell of himself. Can't work with anybody. And so if you're not Alan Lazard or Devontae Adams, I mean, it's just not going to work. It's only Aaron's buddies. It's a secret club, and not a lot of people that are in it are even a part of it. And so Mike Williams, he comes into Pittsburgh. It added a weapon because it's an over-the-top receiver. It then allows for George Pickens. Look at this. When Russ came in at quarterback, man, Pickens is red hot. He's been starting to get involved. And even Calvin Austin, which is typical Russell Wilson. This is typical from Seattle. Because how Tyler Lockett came in is literally with what I'm seeing with Calvin Austin. He's getting involved in a lot of those plays that we know they're drawing up. Eventually, Roman Wilson will look like this. But, I mean, this is why Mike Tomlin, he kind of saw this. Tomlin is, I have control of the defense. All I need is I just need to have the smart right-hand man in Arthur Smith, who, as a coordinator, can you blame him? He's extending the plays. He's opening up the playbook. It looks a lot different. Now, the offensive line, of course, I'm crossing my fingers on, but it's a lot better than where you were with Kenny Pickett. I'll tell you that. But that game against Baltimore, there's a lot that Lamar is trying to fight for. So, but that game there, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, is a game I like. One other game I'm interested in watching. So, two AFC West teams, the Broncos and the Chargers, they both got some interesting games. Denver's got Atlanta at home. And the Chargers are at home on a Sunday night football game. They got flexed in against the Cincinnati Bengals, who, by the way, you know the Chargers all time in the series against the Bengals, including two postseason matchups. You know what they are? 23-15.
Dang.
And Herbert and Burrow only faced off once. One time. Isn't that crazy how that is?
Who won that matchup?
Herbert did.
Ooh.
Because that was when the offense was just throwing it. Like the offense was clicking on a lot of cylinders. And that was the last time that matchup against Cincinnati, that's how it looked. Now, the reason for this is because Cincinnati and Denver are playing for something. They are playing for right now where they're sitting at in that wild card spot. Now, if the playoffs were to start tomorrow, that is important because who would you I think for both these teams, Denver is just developing a lot of their players. And Bo Nix looks very good every single week. But Cincinnati is trying to, they are fighting tooth and nail to want to get in the playoffs. Because Joe Burrow is a completely different animal once he is in there. But number one, I don't trust that defense. And I think the defensive coordinator looks lost. But Burrow having an MVP caliber season with what he's working with a defense with no justice for him, and then a Denver team that with a rookie quarterback, and I'd say Cortland Sutton and a couple of some guys that he's utilizing. Okay, he's utilizing everybody. This is clearly something that the Broncos really have been working at. But I love their defense with Vance Joseph.
And with Edric Estime getting more carries now and him being focal back.
I will tell you what. There is going to be a pivotal change by the close to the end of the season where I think Estime will have more carries than Javonte Williams. I think they've tried this with him. He's not quite the answer. But I do like, in short spurts, I like Jaleel McLaughlin. I think he looks good. Anytime you need that situational back to come out the backfield, that's pretty damn good if you ask me. But Estime, yeah, that kid's got more pop, and I think he's got more to show for than what I've seen with Javonte Williams. I think a lot of people have noticed that here as I live here in Denver, and a lot of the buzzes is Javonte's not the same since that injury. Not the same.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's kind of hard. So the Falcons, and what's kind of funny is they're kind of in a buyer's remorse type of thing, a bit, with what Kirk Cousins has looked like. But they haven't gotten a bunch of sacks, which is why I think with Denver, I don't want to spoil with my picks, but I'm picking Denver. And the reason for this is Atlanta has such trouble getting to the quarterback. They don't get a whole lot of sacks. It's Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, and a bunch of the guys in the secondary, but nobody's putting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And here's another thing. The Broncos right now are 3-0 against NFC South opponents. They put up 26 against Tampa, 33 against New Orleans, and I think they put up they put up 28 against Carolina. So altogether, that's about close to 87 points against NFC South opponents. What do you think this weekend's going to look like in Denver against another NFC North or NFC South opponent? So that's why I don't think they're that intimidated by it. But if Denver wins, and this is why it's kind of funny how this works with division rivals, because they are hoping the Chargers beat the Bengals to keep their spot. If the Bengals lose, I think it's kind of over here. I don't want to be negative because of right now where the Bengals are, but I feel bad for Joe Burrow. I just feel bad that this is what it looks like. But the Chargers,
because this is a chance for him to win an MVP this year.
It is.
He's got the numbers to prove it and back it up, but they're gonna give it to Lamar because he would be in the playoffs rather than Joe Burrow. Now, if Joe makes it into the playoffs and he has better, or if not the same numbers as Lamar, I could see them giving it to Burrow.
Agreed. Absolutely. Because when you look at it from a statistic standpoint, I mean, how could you not consider that? But again, I don't think his team has really done him much of justice. I think we all can agree with that. But I will tell you what, though. I mean, the way I've seen this Chargers team now we're already going into week 11. In 9 weeks, this is outside the bye. In 9 weeks, this Chargers team is about to do something that has not been done since 1990 of the Giants, 99 of I believe it was one of the defenses, and then in 2004, where a defense has never given up more than 20 points. And they're the number one scoring defense.
That's crazy.
With all of the same pieces that they kept from last season, And Jesse Minter's turned this thing around now in months. They're already talking about Jesse Minter being a one-and-done coordinator. There's already coaching offers right now, which is insane. But that does tell you, though, because Jim Harbaugh, this is so classic Harbaugh. And what people are starting to realize is that Harbaugh's not the same hard-nosed, nose-in-the-trench coach. I think a part of that is once he left San Francisco, I think there's a part in it where he lightened up. Okay, because it was a harder situation in San Francisco, but he turned the culture around. You know, I know a lot of people come back and forth about, well, this was never his team to begin with. So what? He put together the pieces that from previously in Mike Singletary, he's put the pieces together, and look at what the culture looked like. The culture looked strong with him. I mean, they got to a Super Bowl. So to see him do this very quickly, and yet there's no copying at all. He's one of one. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. The Chargers have been dying for a culture since they left San Diego. And when Jim Harbaugh comes into here, this is classic. And now they're in a 3-game winning streak. Now, this is the toughest part, though, because it's Cincinnati in prime time. It's Baltimore next week in prime time on Monday Night Football, the Hard Bowl. Atlanta, and then they got to face the Chiefs now a second time in Arrowhead on prime time. So this is where the team's really going to get tested again. Because early on, I feel like they've got the kinks out in 4 weeks. Because if the playoffs were to start tomorrow, the Chargers would potentially be facing the Steelers for the second time. And the first time, they got into a bar fight. And that's when they really toughened up. Injuries. And now they're getting some important pieces back. Christian Fulton will be healthy this weekend. The rookie corners that they've had. And then at the same time, they got Trey Pipkins back. This team, and this is what's so crucial about every single team. When you get the kinks out early and you start to become healthier by the later the season gets, I'm just saying, there are teams that are forces not to be reckoned with. I mean, I'm seeing that with the NFC. I mean, there are some teams out there that want to play spoiler.
And it's kind of funny because a lot of the NFL or the NFC has been weak and the AFC's been strong. Now it's the opposite way around. The NFC is starting to get stronger while the AFC looks like it's weak this year.
It's getting open. And which is why, like, a bunch of teams, because I love with what Denver's doing, but I know with what Denver's plan was to begin with. Rookie quarterback, they needed to get – I mean, the offense had not been a problem, but I think they've been experimenting a lot of what they have and what they don't have to what they go into next year. But Vance Joseph in that defense, I mean, it's why he was highly regarded as a DC. I don't blame him. You know, and so what he's done now with this defense with Patrick Surtain and so many of their defensive guys, even when they re-signed Jonathan Cooper, they got some guys. But we're very lucky with what the NFL gives us every single week.
And yet nobody can dethrone the Chiefs in the AFC West.
No. And here's the other thing. Kansas City and Buffalo. Now, Keon Coleman's out, and so is Amari Cooper.
Oh, he's out officially?
Yes. Ooh. So, Buffalo at home, while Kansas City on the road. Now, I've talked to several people about this because looking at Buffalo's history, and this is even including the playoffs, we know what they were in the playoffs. They could not get past Mahomes and the Chiefs. That has been one of their biggest kryptonite. The other thing is the Bills could – so the background behind the trade with the Chiefs when they got Xavier Worthy is because the Bills couldn't afford Xavier Worthy. So that's why they did that trade, and then that's why they settled for Keon Coleman, is now what I'm hearing. So, again, it makes sense. I understand that for cap purposes. But, I mean, you traded on with the enemy here. And you're now in this spot where I just feel like this is a very big trap, if I'll be honest with you. I don't know what to feel as far as betting expertise. I don't know how to feel about this game because it could go either way. I feel like if Buffalo wins, Kansas City loses, they are going to correct themselves. And then here we go again with the AFC. Whereas if the Bills lose, and depending on the style they lose in, maybe it's not as drastic. Because I'll tell you what, I've spoken to some Chiefs fans. They're actually on a tightrope with them being undefeated. Believe it or not. There have been some of them that they're like, I want to feel good about being undefeated, but then again, I kind of don't. Because I've spoken about this from a good friend of mine, Mike Darcy over at KC Sports Report. Great guy, close with the team. He broke that down perfectly, and again, because I don't get fooled by what the Chiefs have been doing. They execute situationally. This whole ref thing needs to stop. I mean, it's like a get out of jail free card that's been completely expired now for 10 weeks. Like stop throwing that out there. Like they execute situationally. By the way, they are without Harrison Butker for 4 weeks now. Yeah. Has to undergo arthroscopic knee surgery. So you can throw whatever you want at the Chiefs, but I don't know. I don't know what to think about this game. I really don't. I really wish I was that clear about this particular matchup. But I'm a bit afraid of what this outcome is going to look like for both sides. And it being in Buffalo. So that's even worse. So I don't know. I don't know. This is kind of hard for me.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But no, this weekend, it is some damn good games. God, I cannot wait to get to Prime Predictions next week. I really can. But there are some games that I kind of am like, stay away from. But you know what? I'm going to trust my gut for some of those games that I'm like, I'll stay away from. Because they could just kind of strain my wallet, but I'm going to go with my gut in some of these picks, and y'all are going to see it tomorrow. So I don't want to be the spoiler, but like I said, the 3 games I'll give you is tonight I got the Eagles. I will take Denver, knowing right now with how they played against NFC South opponents this year. I mean, they've been playing great. And that Bengals-Chargers game in SoFi, under the bright lights, defense playing good, Jim Harbaugh on prime time. I mean, they want to make up for the last prime time game against Arizona. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So those are your 3 freebies. The rest of them you'll see tomorrow. But all right, we got to get out of here. But appreciate all of you guys for being here with us tonight. Lots of good stuff. Jason and myself, we're always constantly talking about our heads, but just giving you the entertainment you want. Yeah, Prime Predictions tomorrow. I'm excited about it. Commanders, Eagles tonight. Let's see how Philly really pans out up on this. Right now, as I'm seeing right now, it's not looking like I was expecting. I'll just say that. But I know Chase and I were probably going to be chopping it up a little after hours as I'm kind of watching a bit of this game. But appreciate all of you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow night. Prime Predictions. You do not want to miss it. here on the show, sponsored by BetUS and by SeatGeek. Promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off of your next event. Whether that's going to your favorite sports team, your favorite artist at your favorite concert venue, or wherever, give SeatGeek a try. Find out why they're the best ticketing app for your next event. Download it on your mobile device to Google Play in the App Store. I trust it with everything. I trust it with all of my events I go to. Never skips a beat. SeatGeek.com, also on your mobile device to Google Play in the App Store. But Chase and myself, appreciate all of you guys, and we'll see you all tomorrow for Prime Predictions. Take care, you guys, and enjoy this Thursday night game tonight.
Enjoy the weekend games.